From the moment the news of his historic transfer to Ferrari was announced last year, the Lewis Hamilton effect has been on display for the whole world to see, and for Mercedes to mourn. From the record-breaking hike in Ferrari market valuation in the middle of an industry-wide downturn, and the corresponding drop in the Mercedes valuation to the extent that Ferrari overtook them for the first time ever, with the margin continuing to widen. To the fans around the world, taking the opportunity to celebrate him at different tracks as the F1 circus traveled around the globe.
Man, what is this crowd like for you?
Oh, it's the best. It's honestly, they've been so supportive for so many years. Team LH China, they've just been incredible all these years. It's so great to be back.
And now that the long-awaited GOAT has landed at Maranello, the Lewis Hamilton effect is starting to sweep through the Ferrari rank and file, the Tifosi, and just about anyone who is into Formula One. The media are whipping themselves into a frenzy over the gift that keeps on giving, while the fans are eagerly looking forward to what could be a historic F1 season. His rivals are trying to maintain an outward appearance of composure, while we are unable to determine which stage of grief his former partners are at. However, what we do know is that it has been nothing but good news coming out every day from Maranello since his arrival. But before going into the latest piece of good news, we would like to urge those of you who haven't yet done so, to sign our online petition for an inquiry into the BBC and Channel 4's coverage of what happened in Abu Dhabi. A link has been provided in the description. If you are on X, then please repost our tweet. Thank you. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks. To recall, when the transfer was announced last year, many so-called experts openly speculated that the washed-up GOAT was only going to Ferrari for the romance and the paycheck, despite his publicly stated desire to win his eighth. It is not surprising that the so-called experts openly disregarded the opinion of the GOAT, despite the fact that he was clearly persuaded to make the switch, after reviewing what both teams had to offer. This is the current state of affairs in Formula One, where talking heads look to whip up controversy rather than offer informed opinions. We were particularly struck by the fact that former world champion Damon Hill was the only member of the Sky F1 team to have commented that the GOAT was going to Ferrari because he had concluded that that would give him the best chance of competing for the title. The rest of them simply put it down to romance or money, possibly to whip up more controversy and confirm their bias against the GOAT. How it never crossed their minds that the most successful driver in the history of the sport reached his decision after carefully weighing up his options is beyond us, but what the heck? He had first-hand knowledge of what was happening at Mercedes, and Ferrari must have shown him something that in his judgment was better. But never mind all of that, a few uninformed experts, many of whom have never driven in F1, or if they had, not to any substantive level, chose to suggest that he was just going for the romance and the money, because the better chance of winning was with Mercedes. Perhaps their ill-informed opinion was based on the results from the season before the announcement, which had ended with Ferrari 3 points behind Mercedes. Perhaps this was what the LHDS-afflicted talking heads seized upon to confirm their bias, instead of respecting the judgment of the only person to have been able to consider both options fully. However, the season ended with Ferrari finishing strongest, and falling short of the title by just 14 points, but a massive 184 points ahead of a struggling Mercedes that had slumped to a distant fourth. We are not aware that any of the talking heads subsequently acknowledged that the GOAT was right to have made the switch, but if you are aware, please let us know in the comments. Ferrari going on a strong upward trajectory, with Mercedes heading down the opposite direction at a faster pace, is not the only sign that Sir Lewis was right, and the media were wrong. Yet again, in order to confirm their bias, the experts also concluded that the GOAT's worst ever season in Formula One was down to his diminishing prowess and not how bad the car was. This was despite the fact that at the end of the 2023 season, Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff had openly admitted that he had been wrong to take the team down the design route they had gone down for the past 2 seasons, while disregarding the GOAT's advice to the contrary. Again, we are not aware that any of the so-called experts referenced this admission, as Toto and other key Mercedes personnel like Andrew Shovlin were putting it about in 2024, after Sir Lewis had informed them he was off to Ferrari, that the problem was with his inability to adapt his driving style to the new regulation ground effect cars, unlike his younger teammate. Well, that's funny, because in the previous year, the driver who was struggling to adapt finished third, 59 points ahead of his better adapting and younger teammate who finished in 8th. As is customary in F1, anyone suffering from LHDS can make any uninformed or deranged comment about Sir Lewis, but no retraction or acknowledgement is forthcoming when they are proven wrong further down the line. They just simply move on to the next unhinged confirmation bias. In keeping with F1 tradition, the next demented attack on the GOAT was that he would struggle to keep up with his younger and faster Ferrari teammate, Charles Leclerc. Firstly, we need to restate what our regulars will know, which is that we have nothing but the utmost love and respect for Charles, who we consider to be the best of the crop, aside from the GOAT. So, that being said, it should not be considered a slight for the settled Charles to be quicker than the new arrival under these circumstances. The title is decided at the end of the season. But nevertheless, the LHDS-afflicted media, desperate to write something critical of the GOAT, are attempting to spin the test times that both Ferrari drivers have produced to suggest that the GOAT has lost speed. This is despite the fact that they have no information about the conditions underlying the tests for each driver, and each driver came top on one of the 2 days of testing. But the haters are so overcome by hate that they cannot recognize that they are up against a crosswind that is overwhelming. The same crosswind that carried the Ferrari market valuation to new heights, as those of Mercedes dropped to new lows, is the same crosswind that is now carrying all those at Ferrari along to new heights of intensity, resolve and eagerness to succeed, while those at Mercedes are grieving. This is the same crosswind that has boosted Ferrari's social media by almost 1 million in less than 1 month, while that of Mercedes fell, and that of Red Bull remained suspiciously unchanged. Ferrari is the only team amongst the title contenders that is united, with every member pulling in the same direction, and being carried along on a current of unprecedented public goodwill. Red Bull are fighting so many internal battles we simply have no time or interest in listing them here, but feel free to do so in the comments. Similarly, we have repeatedly expressed our view that McLaren have no driver capable of winning the World Championship despite what some experts may wish. The stars are all aligned behind Ferrari, and the public have spoken. Forza Ferrari.